Hello, welcome to Breakfast Central, a News Central television. I am Benga Aborowa. This is the show where we bring you everything you need to start your brand new week, from insightful discussions to news and everything in between. Today is quite an unusual day. I'll be riding solo for now because of circumstances beyond our control. But it reminds me of that Michael Jackson song when he said, "You are not alone." Yeah, so sit back, relax. We have quite a lot in store for you today. But first, let's bring you the top stories from the weekend. We'll start off with NAFDAC. NAFDAC has been in the news a lot recently for its crackdown on illicit and expired substances, drugs. Yes, the NAFDAC boss, Professor Mojisola, over the weekend said, look, we're not trying to stop businesses from going about their legitimate work, but what we want is to sanitize the fake, to get rid of fake drugs, and the crackdown continues. Let's listen to what she had to say. She was talking to a group of journalists.
So we are not disturbing trade, we are protecting lives. We couldn't have done it ourselves without NSA. It is security risk for our country. What BBC showed will break your heart. Young men that have been rendered useless. So what NAFDAC is doing is what NAFDAC is supposed to do. Safeguarding. There is no politics in what we are doing. No politics in what we are doing. Most of the shops are not registered by PCN. PCN registers sites and the people working at the sites. So the rules have been broken right from the beginning. And to see many of these products being in our own, okay, this is another one. Tramadol, 225. This will fry the brain of anybody. This will destroy the future of our country, our youth, our future.
The NAFDAC boss there, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, highlighting the issues with fake drugs in Nigeria. And she did reference the BBC documentary. BBC African Eye did a documentary on the opioid crisis in West Africa. They went to Ghana, Nigeria, and it just shows you the magnitude of this problem, and we're only just scratching the surface. And listening to the NAFDAC boss there, you can only think about the magnitude of what she has to do and the scale of what they're up against, because this fake drug merchants don't seem to want to relent in their nefarious activities. But she also mentioned that the Office of the National Security Advisor is involved, because this is a matter of life and death, and you don't want drugs and illicit substances to destroy the future of the nation. She also mentioned that, look, trade will happen, but let's sanitize the environment. And you begin to wonder what was going on, what happens at the port of entry. There's so many layers to this. But I'm happy NAFDAC is on top of the situation, and they're trying to sanitize the drug industry, pharmaceutical industry, so we can really get rid of fake drugs, because it's a bullet to the head, if you ask me. Now, moving on to our second top story of the weekend, and that takes us to Kaduna, where the former FCT Minister, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, has been hobnobbing with members of the opposition. As we speak, he hasn't handed in his resignation from the APC. He's still a registered card-carrying member of the APC, but these have sent analysts and tongues wagging. They believe it's part of machinations towards the 2027 elections, but he's yet to come out to say, look, this is my definite position. But let's listen to what he had to say over the weekend.
We tend to forget what good things our leaders have done, but only remember one or two of their mistakes. And taking Babangida as an example, people don't realize that the three largest banks in Nigeria today did not exist before Babangida. But Babangida, that license guarantee trust, license access, and Zenith Bank. These are the three largest banks in Nigeria. They didn't exist before Babangida came, but nobody gives him credit. So these books that we want to write and to tease out some of this. Nobody gives Vice President Atiku Abubakar the...
You were recently quoted to have said you can only go back to the PDP if Satan converted to Islam.
Yeah, you know, I drew that metaphor to show the impossibility of Nasir El-Rufai ever going to the PDP. If I have to leave the APC, I will retire from politics and go back to doing other things that I was doing, because politics was something that I just got into some years ago.
So there you have it from the horse's mouth. He said, if I ever go back to, in his own words, a very interesting take there. That's why there's this saying that you never take politicians for what they say at face value, because you never know what the future holds. And it says if he ever goes back to the PDP, that means, the devil will have to convert and things like that. But this has led to lots of commentary, and people have been talking, saying he should be bold enough to, we had a former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who came out on national TV and tore his membership card of the People's Democratic Party, saying, look, he's retiring from politics. So instead of playing both sides, make up your mind, and like they say on social media, make up your mind with your full chest and declare your membership or your interest in joining the PDP. People make mistakes. With hindsight, you could admit that, look, I thought the APC was the party and this is not it. But instead of playing both sides, there's talks that he should just make up his mind and decide if he wants to go to the PDP. But there's also the leadership in APC. Are they going to take punitive measures against him for anti-party activities? Some might not term it as full anti-party activities, hobnobbing with members of the opposition. Now let's look at our final top story from the weekend. Nigeria to end visa on arrival policy over security concerns. This is 2025. People are wondering, in different countries. Africa is opening up. Ghana is now visa-free to most AU members. Kenya is also visa-free to most AU members. So why is Nigeria taking a few steps back instead of opening its doors? Nigerians celebrated Dirty December. They said, we made a lot in tourism and all of that. Instead of opening up, we shouldn't be closing up and making this bureaucratic bottlenecks, make it difficult for visitors to come in and, have a feel of our amazing and beautiful country. But I guess the minister, Bumitunde Ojo, knows best in why they're making this decision. So that's it for our top stories of the weekend. Like I said, we have a bumper package, an edition for you today. So sit back, relax, and we'll take the news headlines next. Stories for today. New local government chairman sworn in Osun after controversial poll. FCT Minister to partner with Egyptian Moroccan ambassadors. And June 12, IBB's book sparks debate, critics call for prosecution. UNICEF accuses military of violating children's rights. And later today on the program, we'll be bringing you the newspaper front pages. You stay with us. Breakfast Central continues shortly. Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has pledged his commitment in making Abuja safe for members of the diplomatic community. The minister made this known while receiving the ambassadors of Egypt and Morocco, saying that the FCT administration will do all it can to create a conducive environment for them to fulfill their diplomatic responsibilities. News Central's Amadine Oyi reports.
The ambassador of Egypt first arrived with his team. He commended the FCT minister for the ongoing infrastructural works within the capital and called for an improvement in bilateral relations aimed at expanding the economy of the FCT. The minister commended the long-standing relations between Nigeria and Egypt, saying that the FCT administration is available to improve on the already existing relationship.
I really look forward to working closely with Your Excellency and other senior officials trying to push these bilateral relations, especially when it comes to economy, expanding infrastructure in both Egypt and Nigeria, because there is great potential that remains untapped. As the biggest two countries on the continent, I think we share the responsibility of enhancing our bilateral relations to take the continent further.
Nigeria has a good relationship with Egypt dating back years. And we have a lot of their companies that are also doing well, particularly the Arab contractors. One of our key infrastructure. And by carrying out one of the very, very important roads, Airport Kuje Road, which is very key for us. So we're happy to receive you. And we'll continue to see that whatever we can do for you, do not hesitate to let us know. It will be our pleasure to have good relationship with you.
Also, the ambassador of Morocco visited shortly after, expressing his willingness to develop relations with the FCT administration. The minister, in reply, pledged to support the diplomatic community resident in Abuja. He acknowledged the improvement in security, saying the FCT will ensure that the capital is safe for all visitors and residents alike.
We want, of course, to develop this relationship not only at the level of the federal government, but also with the territory. Hope to have partnership between Rabat, the capital of Morocco, and Abuja as the capital of Nigeria, this big country.
We would like to explore opportunities on how these two cities can cooperate. It's very key. So our is to make sure that all the diplomats carry out their business ease without any hindrance. Of course, you can agree with me that the security has so much improved. You can see the infrastructure development going on in the city. So we're happy to do anything that will make your stay in Abuja comfortable.
The minister commended both ambassadors for their willingness to support the ongoing development visible in the capital. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Now, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has emerged victorious in the Osun State local government elections within all 30 local government areas. The announcement was made by the chairman of the Osun State Independent Electoral Commission, Ibrahim Babangida, on Saturday. Here's what you should know about the just concluded Osun State local government elections. The election was conducted despite warnings from the police and the Attorney General of the Federation to postpone the poll due to security concerns. The Osun State Independent Electoral Commission relied on a court judgment to proceed with the election. The newly elected chairman of the 30 local government councils in Osun State have received their certificates of return. The PDP's victory comes amid tensions between the party and the APC over control of local government councils, which has resulted in at least 6 deaths in recent clashes. Let's take a listen to the Osun State Independent Electoral Commission chairman.
The candidates of the People's Democratic Party in the 332 wards emerged as winners. Their names are as listed in the schedule to this text, and I, as the Chief Returning Officer of the Commission, hereby return each and every one of them as duly elected councillors of their respective wards. The results are available any time for anyone who may be interested in certified true copies. For the 30 local government areas of Osun State, the candidate of the People's Democratic Party cleared all the seats.
Now, join us this morning to discuss the Osun local government elections is a senior lecturer at the Law School University of Hull in the United Kingdom, Dr. Misbah Alamu Latif. Also joining us is the special advisor to the Osun State Governor on Legal Matters, Honorable Nuruddin Karim. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen, and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central.
Good morning, and thank you.
It's a pleasure. Now, I'd like to start with Honorable Nuruddin Karim. There was a lot of back and forth, the courts, the legal dispute between the APC and PDP before the polls went ahead on Saturday. How would you describe the conduct of those polls, and knowing the legal battles that happened between the APC and PDP before the polls, would you describe the local government polls in Osun State as free and fair?
Thank you. The election that was conducted on Saturday was free and fair, and the OSEC went ahead to conduct the election, leveraging on two separate judgments, declared the offices as vacant. As I can confirm to you that as at Friday, a day before the election, there were two subsisting judgments that declared the offices vacant. So the OSEC, premised on that, decided to go on with the conduct of the election. And the election went on free and fair, and it was peaceful. Okay. So that is it. If I may make specific reference to the two judgments I referred to, in 2022, there was a judgment obtained by the APP as an opposition party in the state from the Federal High Court. In that judgment, the court declared the election held to the local government in 2022 as a null void. The APC, as a matter of fact, appealed against the judgment. The appeal was dismissed in January 2025. Also, on Friday, a day before the election, and before that, PDP equally approached the High Court of Osun State about 5 days before the election. And on Friday, the court delivered a judgment which equally declared the seats vacant. And it was on that premise that the OSEC, as a respondent in the two judgments I have made reference to, decided to go on with the election. You will recall that the OSEC had given notice of the election since February 2024 in order to comply with the express provisions of the Electoral Act to the effect that any election to be conducted into local government, there must be a notice of 360 days to the electorate and all political parties. It was this notice that the election conducted in 2002 did not comply with. You will recall that in 2022, the then OSEC in Osun State and the government of former Governor Oyetola, after former Governor Oyetola lost the gubernatorial election, Governor quickly already planned and conducted election into local government. And it only gave the electorate in the state 2 months notice, 60 days notice, contract to the express provisions
of 360
of the Act and the Osun electoral law, which prescribes 360 days notice. And it was on this basis that the Federal High Court in Osogbo declared the election not void and sacked the potentially elected officials in the election. There were two separate judgments obtained against the election in 2002. The first one was obtained by the PDP. The second one was obtained by the APC. We concede that the one obtained by the PDP was struck out by the Court of Appeal on the ground that at the time the PDP approached the court and filed its originating summons, the course of action had not arisen in that because as at that time, the deposit had not published the notice of the election. So the Court of Appeal found that the suit filed by the PDP was premature, was speculative, as it didn't wait before the then OSEC filed or published the election notice. But this legal error, or let me say technical error, did not arise in the case of APP, as APP approached court in 2022 after the then OSEC had published the election notice. And that was why the appeal filed by the APC against the judgment obtained by the PDP was dismissed by the Court of Appeal. The appeal was filed
thank you for that background.
So as we speak, as at the Friday, when, as at the day before the election conducted on Saturday, the seats were vacant. Two separate judgments declared the seats vacant as at Friday, that is the eve of the election. So
thank you for that background, Honorable Karim. I would like to bring Dr. Misbah Latif into this conversation. Now, Dr. Misbah Latif, let's talk about the current situation of things. Against the advice of the Attorney General of the Federation, against the advice of the Nigerian police, the governor of Osun State, Governor Adeleke, went ahead to conduct this local government elections, which the Honorable deemed as free and fair. The results of that elections, it was a complete sweep of all 30 chairmanship seats and 322 councillorship seats in the Osun State local government elections. Where does that lead us now? The latest judgment when it comes to the myriad and the legal disputes surrounding local government elections in Osun State. Does the latest judgment that came, pronouncement rather, from the court in Ilesha on Friday, does it validate these elections that were held? And what happens to the to all the judgments in the past and suits that we have from various parties?
All right, thank you so much, and good morning once again. Let me say that one of the challenges to our democratic credibility in Nigeria is what I call contrive legal controversies, particularly when this is done, mischievously by people who have the capacity to guide the society, and then they choose to do otherwise. Now, the reason why I've said this is very clear. In the mix of all that we have seen so far regarding the Osun election, I think the judgment of Friday is the most scandalous, and I'm being very careful here in my choice of words, but for the want of better adjective, that cannot really be called a judgment, because it is a complete mockery of our judicial process. So to go straight to your question, where does this lead us?
No, I would like to know why you have deemed that election, the judgment as a mockery of our judicial processes.
All right, thank you so much. You see, I've actually described the judgment not only as a mockery of the judicial system in Osun State, I've also described it as a black market judgment, probably procured through an unethical way. And why do I say
These are very serious allegations.
Now, they are. And as a senior lawyer, I take responsibility for what I'm saying, and I understand the import of all of this. Now, that judgment was, on the face of it, was obtained through a process that is not exactly in accordance with the rules of the court. The proceeding leading to that judgment or purported judgment was filed on the 18th. It was supposed to be a judgment to resolve dispute among parties. On the one hand, you have the PDP as the only applicant. On the other hand, you have OSEC and then the chairman of OSEC. These are one and the same parties, and there is no dispute. What was that judgment was supposed to achieve? It was supposed to compel OSEC to go ahead with an election. Now, doing so was clearly, contemptuous of the existing Court of Appeal judgment, which had validated the existence of local government chairmen across Osun State. So in the hierarchy of courts, or what we call judicial precedent, no high court of any state has the judicial competence to issue an order that will amount to a contempt of a decision of the Court of Appeal in Nigeria. So basically, looking at the fact that, one, there was no dispute. So directing OSEC to go out with the election when the parties on one hand and on the other hand are one and the same. All the parties who were supposed to be part of that proceeding were never brought before the court. So the judge ought to have actually asked himself, and this is with due respect to my Lord, Honorable Justice Aderibigbe, who gave that judgment. All the parties were not before the court. The parties in the election in Osun State, on one hand. Two, the ruling was given barely 3 days after the court papers were filed. These are clear, I would say, I just really want to be very careful again now, and I really want to be modest in my choice of word. So basically, that judgment is what we call non sequitur in law. It is quite, I would say, ineffectual. It has no basis. It couldn't have been relied upon to conduct an election, and whatever was built on it cannot stand. Because in law, again, we say you cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. So basically,
so the implications of this now, Dr. Lateef.
The implication is that first, the OSEC in Osun State couldn't have validly relied on an order that is actually ineffectual, as I've put it. Two, the election that was conducted was actually a sham, as I've described it elsewhere. I saw from your clip now, the chairman of OSEC in Osun State reeling out names of people who purportedly win an election. I'm sure you have covered election before now. This is the most scandalous of such exercise I've ever seen anywhere. No figures were attached to name. It just barely read out name and nothing more. No collation, nothing, no figures. I don't want to go into other particular material of what I've already described a sham. And a sham by law, or technically speaking, actually means something that is outrightly fraudulent. So what we saw in Osun 2 days ago, one, was not really an election. There was no legal basis for it. And as we say in law, the truth speaks for itself. I'm sure the governor, His Excellency, Governor Adeleke, understands this. And that was why when yesterday he purported to swear them in, he actually directed, as I've seen from reports, that they should not go near the local government council.
We'll get to that in the course of our discussion, Dr. Lateef. But I would like to bring in the Special Advisor to the Governor on Legal Matters, Honorable Nuruddin Karim. While Dr. Lateef was speaking, I saw you nodding your head in disagreement, and your body language gave out the message that you were totally not in agreement with what Dr. Lateef was saying. Number one, I want you to respond to allegations of that the judgment that was given on Friday didn't go through proper judicial scrutiny. It was rushed, and it didn't meet all legal standards. And number two, the credibility of the elections that took place on Saturday. You saw the OSEC chairman read out names of winners with no figures. And there are also reports that there were no accreditation materials used during the elections. I guess that's why we have a total sweep of the PDP sweeping all local government and councillorship positions. How do you respond to that?
Well, in the first place, with due respect to the doctor, I think we are lawyers. The excellent principle of law is that when a court of law gives a judgment, there is what we call presumption of regularity and validity in any judgment given by the court until a higher court sets that judgment aside. My name is Senior, with respect, the opinion of my Nene Senior cannot constitute the judgment of an appeal court, setting aside the judgment of the court. A judgment of the court is meant to be obeyed until a higher court sets it aside. All the purported irregularities in the judgment, as highlighted by my Nene Senior, I think is an issue that when there are mechanisms in our judicial system to challenge the judgment. So I don't want to believe, as we speak, as at Saturday that the election was held, the judgment remained binding and valid. And even up to this moment, we are exchanging those. I think only a higher court can set aside the judgment. So, and I also want to point something out. The judgment that was rendered on Friday was actually founded on the judgment obtained by the APP in 2002, which sacked the chairman, purportedly elected, and nullified the election on the ground that the then OSEC just gave 60 days notice instead of 360 notice. And APC filed an appeal against the judgment of the APP. The appeal was dismissed in January this year. So the judgment of the court, until set aside by a higher court, remains subsistent.
Now, Honorable Karim, what about what Dr. Lateef mentioned, the issue of the other parties not even present in court, so not having representatives before this judgment was given?
No, the relief sought by the PDP. You know, we have to commend the PDP for being civil. As the tension was high, PDP decided to approach court. And the party that the PDP dragged to court was OSEC, because OSEC was like maybe very reluctant to go ahead with the conduct of the election. So the PDP, as a party that was interested in the conduct of the election, dragged the OSEC to court. The election was not meant to be conducted by any party. And of course, any party cannot be compelled to participate in the election. So the PDP sought relief to compel the OSEC to go ahead with the election, considering the resources for the past 1 year that had been committed to the preparations for the election, and considering the subsisting judgment of the APP, the appeal on which had been dismissed, and which APP judgment was actually actually nullified the election conducted in 2022, meaning that as at that Friday, both the APP judgment and the fresh judgment from the High Court of Osun State had declared the seats vacant. It was on that premise that OSEC went ahead to conduct the election. With respect to my Nene Senior in the House, the presumption of validity and regularity in any judgment of the court still exists in favor.
Now, because of want of time,
can approach the court.
Now, because of time, I would like you to also respond. Honorable Karim, I want you to respond to the allegations on the conduct of the elections is falling short of democratic standards, that there was no accreditation materials and it was a sham. How do you respond to that? What's your take?
My brother, we will not, it is not a condition for the validity and credibility of an election that all voters in the state must vote. I want you to know that one. Anybody alleging that because of some people did not vote somewhere, that means the election.
No, they're not. I mean, they're saying that the conduct of the elections fell short of democratic standards. It's not about the number of voters that turned up. The OSEC chairman was declaring results without numbers.
The FBC, no. If you listen to the OSEC chairman, after declaring the winners, he said, anybody, the documents, the results, or any data that anybody might want to get are available with them.
I mean, shouldn't it be transparent? We've seen election conducts in different parts of the world. It should be part of the announcement process. It's not something that you appeal to see. It's democracy is an open and civil process. Now, but let me touch on one more thing before I move to Dr.
And you said, Chairman said, anybody who wants any document as regards the election, the result, everything, this will apply. This will apply, will be obliged with the certified copy of any document in the election. Then I want to tell you, there is already an election petition tribunal set up for this election. If anybody is aggrieved, the channel is there, the opening is there, the window is there for them to express their grievances against the election.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nuruddin. I would like to bring Dr. Lateef into the conversation. Thank you so much, Honorable Nuruddin. Now, Dr. Lateef, with both the APC and PDP claiming legitimacy over the council positions, this was happening before Saturday's elections. Now, Saturday's elections just seem to model up the whole situation some more. What do you think is the likely political outcome in this Osun State local government administration? We have new elections. The newly sworn-in local government chairman have been told not to resume. What will be the way out of this conundrum so as to avoid further violence? Because we've seen that already.
Okay, thank you so much for using the word conundrum. And you will recall that at the opening, I did say that one of the challenges with our democratic process is controversies, or what you call conundrum now. Actually, these controversies, were created deliberately by politicians. So the only way out is for parties across board to go back to the due process of law. To the best of my understanding, before that election in Osun State, the seat at the local government council were non-vacant, and in fact were duly occupied by parties from the other side. And to the best of my understanding, those people on the other side, they remain, on those seats. So for as long as they have not served out their term, I think the best thing for the governor, which as he did yesterday, is to allow the due process of law to take its course. And that due process of law is to allow these people to serve out their term. And I can tell you that that is what the law says. As we speak now, the only court judgment that is valid in the mix of the whole thing is the judgment of the Court of Appeal decided on the 10th of February. Any other judgments or decision from a lower court, however obtained or whatever it is, they are of no moment, as we say in law. And I did mention that earlier. Now, let me quickly respond to what Mr. Karim said regarding the credibility of the election. You see, there are basic requirements to assess the credibility of any election. And the Electoral Act is very clear on that. And there are also global standards to assess such credibility. Voters' accreditation is very critical. Voters' collation of results is very critical. Announcing specific numbers, of the pool is very critical. All of these were clearly missing in what we saw in Osun over the weekend. Granted that some party boycotted, but that regardless, the requirement of law ought to have been met. So, and this is why this election has been described, as a sham by myself and quite many people. And I'm happy that one of the parties in the election, APM, or who were supposed to be party, actually described the election as such. So going forward, I think it's for the governor to allow the extant chairman.
Okay, a fine place to take a break, gentlemen. We'll continue our conversation on the conduct of the Osun local government and controversies surrounding it. Do stay with us. This is Breakfast Central. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Breakfast Central, and we're still discussing the conduct of the local government elections and controversies in Osun State. And I have with me Tolu Lope Adeleru Balogun. Tolu, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's been a fascinating conversation so far, especially as we look at the political dynamics of what is happening in Osun State under a spotlight with an off-cycle local government election that has left a lot of people really wondering if there's truly democracy
and it
in a
seems
handshake.
to just get messier every day.
Absolutely.
You unravel a new chapter and all of that. But we have a gentleman with us, Dr. Misbah Latif, and also this Special Advisor to the Osun State Governor on Legal Matters, Nuruddin Karim.
All right, I think we should pick up. One of the gentlemen was speaking right before we went for that break, and I'd like him to finalize his thoughts before we start looking at the way forward and also a directive coming from the state governor as well. I think it was that Dr. Latif?
Yes, Dr.
Okay, Dr. Latif, please go ahead and finish your thoughts before we took that break.
All right, thank you so much. I was just trying to say that there are basic criteria to assess credibility of any election, and what we saw in Osun over the weekend qualify that election as a sham or purported election because those basic, criteria, were absent. And for me, this underscore also the need for Nigerians, to rise up peacefully, I would say, by way of agitation and rescue their local government administration from the vice grip of governors. And this is not restricted to Osun State. There is this desperation to dominate local government. And this is why you see across all the states, one party, wins all. Now, can you imagine INEC or federal government, perpetuating this kind of scandals, against the state? Then we can imagine how this will take our democracy. So for me, really, I think going forward, people really need to gear up peacefully by way of agitation, as I said, to participate actively and demand from our politicians, the need to follow the due process of law, not only in the conduct of election, but in all general government affairs. So, as Osun State Governor has done, which I think is the right thing, I think the best thing for them now is to stay away from the local government councils and allow those who are still in those offices to exhaust their time. And then Osun State can take it from there. Otherwise, I fear that the kind of challenges that we saw in the last week, unfortunate fatalities, and I hope we don't see that again, might also, but I just pray that we don't get there again.
All right, thank you so much for that. Now, Mr. Karim, let's pick up from where Dr. Latif stopped in terms of the governor's directive that the newly sworn-in chairman should stay away from the secretariat. Can you give us a sort of background into what this administration is thinking in regards to that directive and how they expect this to play out?
Thank you. You see, the whole world is supposed to give kudos to His Excellency Governor Jackson Norigin and Dumola Adeleke for what it displayed yesterday by directing the newly sworn-in chairman to, for now, stay away from the local government. You will recall that the purported takeover was forceful, was violent. So I won't even see it as that the APC chairman took over last week. Some of them broke the gate to the local government, they broke into the offices, they vandalized some properties of the local government secretariat. So the governor gave the directive yesterday in order to avert any further generation of the crisis pending the time normalcy will return to the state. Some people, what the APC chairman did last week was just invasion. It was not takeover. And going forward, I want to advise the APC. It is settled in our law that a judgment of the court remains binding until a court sets it aside or until the enforcement of the execution or enforcement of same is stayed by another of the court or a higher court. The two judgments, that is the Court of Appeal judgment, dismissing the appeal filed by the APC against the judgment that the APP obtained, sacking the chairman, nullifying the election that produced it. That if the APC wants to be civil, the right thing for them to do, I think, is to get an order of court, staying their execution of the judgment. Another thing, the first judgment given by the Osun State High Court, the law has a procedure through which, when you are dissatisfied with the judgment, you can get the judgment stayed. You can get the enforcement of judgment stayed. This is what is expected of the APC instead of leveraging on what is generally referred to as federal might and federal power to forcefully take over the local government. I join my learned senior in advising, admonishing our politicians to ensure that the intendment of the provision of Section 7 of the Constitution to the effect that the administration of the local government should be carried out by democratically elected council. They should make sure this intendment comes to effect. And this was what the Osun State governor and the OSE tried to do. You will realize that the beginning of this problem we are having today was the attempt by the former governor of Osun State, Governor Oyetola, to voice members of his party on the local councils. You will remember that after he lost the governorship election to Governor Adeleke in July 2022, I knew he had just 3 months to spend in office. It was then he already planned and decided to hold local government election. I was in office for almost 4 years. He didn't think of holding the election. So all this, and that was the basis. There was no compliance with the law that prescribed a notice of 360 days whenever any governor or OSEC or any state electoral commission wants to conduct election.
All right, Mr. Kareem, I'll give you just 10 seconds to wrap that up because we do have to quickly move on. Just 10 seconds to wrap up that thought.
Yeah, what you are saying is that as the PDP is being civil, the APC should be civil. If truly they have any order restating them and anybody disturbs them, I think they should go to that court and enforce the judgment instead of using federal power, using police, using federal power to force themselves on the people.
All right, Mr. Kareem, thank you so much. We'll have to leave the conversation at that for now. I know this is still, in terms of how news works, still quite a developing story, so we'll continue to pay attention to it. But a very big thank you to Dr. Musbah Alamu Latif, Senior Lecturer at the Law School, University of Hull in the United Kingdom, as well as Mr. Nuruddin Kareem, Special Advisor to the Ogun State Governor on Legal Matters. Gentlemen, Osun State, I beg your pardon, Osun State Governor on Legal Matters. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, good morning.
It's a pleasure.
All right. All right, where are we headed next?
Yes, we have this little story here, and then we'll get into our second major story of the day, which everyone has been talking about over the weekend. That's IBB's book. But before then, the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, has accused the Nigerian military of great violations against children in areas of armed conflict during operations. The UNICEF's Chief of Child Protection in Nigeria, while handing over child protection documents to Nigeria's Armed Forces Command and Staff College and the Nigerian Defense Academy, called for the protection in line with international human rights and humanitarian laws.
Sometimes we get a little bit confused. The only location in Nigeria where we have situations of armed conflict is in the Northeast. You're looking in terms of conflict classification, and I quite believe some of you have been treading on elements concerning international. There, somebody will say, but what is it that is different when you really look what is happening in Zamfara or Niger State, wherein we have situations of what? Armed violence. So those are two categories there, armed conflict and armed violence.
But there are issues we still need to look at and talk about, especially when it comes to modern day conflict. The Geneva Convention, as good as it is, I believe, was meant for the wars of yesteryears. Today, that boundary separating peace and war has merged. And unfortunately, our international laws are not keeping pace.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Now, nationwide debaters followed the recent revelation by former Nigerian military President General Ibrahim Babangida, where he publicly expressed regret over the annulment of the June 12, 1993 presidential elections. The admission comes from his newly launched autobiography titled Journey in Service. It was an high-profile event in Abuja.
I accept full responsibility for all decisions taken under my watch. And June 12 happened under my watch. Mistakes, oversights, and missteps happen in quick succession. But I say in my book, in all matters we acted in the supreme national interest so that Nigeria could survive. Our nation's march to democracy was interrupted, a fact that I deeply regret, but Nigeria survived and democracy is still alive, a testament to our resilience and commitment to progress.
Now, in his book, Babangida described the annulment as a deeply regrettable, quote, accident of history, end quote, admitting that MKO Abiola was indeed the winner of the June 12th election. The memoir provides perspective on the controversial annulment, attributing the decision to pressures from military factions led by General Sani Abacha. Now, here's what you need to know about the June 12th elections. Now, on June 12, 1993, Nigeria held its first presidential elections after the military coup of 1983, which was headed by Ibrahim Babangida. The June 12th election is considered the freest and most peaceful election since Nigeria's independence in 1960. The counting process of the elections by the National Electoral Commission revealed a victory for MKO Abiola, as he already won 19 out of the 30 states and the Federal Capital Territory. However, the elections were annulled by Babangida and no winner was declared. The annulment led to political unrest and several protests erupted across the country at the time. Babangida's account has sparked diverse reactions nationwide, with some viewing it as a long-awaited acknowledgement, while others criticize it as an insufficient gesture after decades of silence. Few Nigerians have also called for his prosecution.
Now, join us this morning to discuss this further is journalist and publisher of the Ovation International magazine, Chief Dele Momodu. Chief Momodu, thank you very much for joining us on Breakfast Central this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me.
All right.
Now, Chief, you were in the thick of June 12. You were part of the campaign organization of Chief MKO Abiola. You were meant to be at the venue of the book launch, but for some reasons you couldn't make it. What do you feel when you saw those videos and the images of former President Babangida with the Democrats and also so many people that were part of the June 12 struggle sit there in that room and him saying he's taken full responsibility for the annulment of the elections?
I watched the video and I was hoping that we'll be able to bring some form of closure to the June 12 crisis. All that we needed to do that day was to get a full, unconditional apology for what happened. If I was one of those who wrote the speech with him or for him, I would have ensured that we did not give any further excuses. Just come out, apologize to Nigerians, apologize to the families that were displaced, disrupted, destroyed, and I believe that would have closed it finally. But the moment I started hearing, excuses about, oh, we did it in national interest, we did it so that our democracy can survive. I don't think what we have today is a proper democracy. It's become a sham where the federal government wants to win every election, the state government wants to win every election, the local government is in disarray. So at the end of the day, what have we gained? People tell you, yes, I can declare myself, go to court. So what we have today is kangarooism, which started after June 12. June 12 would have been our best opportunity to put Nigeria on the right track.
You know, I want to pick up from there, because when you look at everything, this is his book, writing, or rather sharing his side of the story. And over the years, just a little bit, we've had different reasons coming from IBB regarding the June 12th elections, ranging from national security, to which he has stuck to now, to also elite pressure, which he mentions, with mentioning Abacha being almost fully responsible for that decision. Do you think that this latest revelation from him in the book is credible, or is he seemingly trying to rewrite history to salvage his legacy? Do we believe that at this point in time now, IBB is truly telling the truth about what happened about the June 12th elections?
Whether credible or not, Abacha is dead. MKO Abiola is dead. So many people mentioned in the book, they are dead. So that's why I said the excuses were no longer necessary. Transferring, blames to others, I believe, was unnecessary. The speech would have been very okay to say on June 12th, I made a mistake, a very fatal mistake, costly mistake, unpardonable mistake, unforgivable mistake, but I beg the nation for forgiveness. I beg the families for forgiveness. Please forgive in the name of Allah and let us move on. I'm sure all these controversies would not have come up again. You can see the Abacha family now, they are fighting back, others are fighting back, all the active people during June 12th are feeling insulted. And so what are we saying? What are we trying to justify? That on June 12th, because of the fear that some people might kill you and kill Abiola, that was theoretical. It would have been better to take that risk. The path we took has virtually destroyed the democratic process in Nigeria. So that is why I believe, again, I don't know if there will be another opportunity. I think we need to foreclose this thing by just looking straight and speaking directly to Nigerians and telling them, I am sorry, I am sorry, I am sorry, I made a mistake. Yes, I truly regret it, but I'm sorry.
But given that, it seems that Nigerians are not getting that closure right now, Chief Momodu. As you said, Omoyele Sowore, the Abacha family,
it's
many
even opened
activists.
More wounds.
It's opened more wounds. And while he's regretting, I don't think I heard an I am sorry in that speech. Many people did not. We heard what it seems to be someone else having to take responsibility who's not alive to counter his narrative. So when we look at that, you see a country that in that moment in time had a destiny chosen for it. And he spoke about it being a national security thing, and that now he's happy to see that Nigeria is still together and Nigeria is still in a democracy. But you talked about this democracy being a kangarooism or a kangarooistic democracy in all of its entities. When we look at that and that singular decision made by IBB and possibly Abacha or Abacha and IBB, whatever equation you want to make, that singular decision changed Nigeria's history and changed Nigeria's trajectory. What do you think about it in terms of the fact that this is now a responsibility situation? This is now a conversation around historical revisionism. This is a conversation around even power and complicity, because some have argued that people like Babangida and even his former circle, including sometimes media elite, actually helped to shape a system that allowed political betrayal such as this. So do you think that Nigeria's elite at the time that this happened could have done anything else to prevent the annulment or even to push for justice afterwards? We're talking about almost 30 years after, if not, for the June 12th elections. Where has been the justice? You talked about families who lost loved ones. People can talk about what happened in the aftermath of the protest. Where has the justice
Even
been?
Chief Dele Momodu was also locked up at Alagbon Close for some time.
So is this going to be enough justice or enough answers for so many thousands of families?
You see, Nigeria is not the first country to go through political upheavals. We've seen even worse situations in Rwanda, in South Africa, in Germany during World War II. The best way to foreclose this kind of monumental crisis is for everybody involved to offer unconditional apologies without excuses. I think the mistake in that speech was that Baba, as we call him, former President Babangida, had an opportunity to say that sorry finally through this book, but we were still hearing all kinds of platitudes, all kinds of excuses, all kinds of justification, which to me did not change anything. Nigerians have made up their minds long ago that June 12 killed the political process. So there is no excuse whatsoever, no matter how beautifully crafted, that is going to change that fact. So the only thing remaining at this stage, President Muhammadu Buhari has already accorded recognition to our president-elect, Chief Moshood Olawale Abiola, and so that is one process at the end of the tunnel. The other process now is for us to have full unconditional apologies, and I'm sure even if some Nigerians still say no, people will say, what else do we want after apologies? In life, when you have wronged someone and you say, I am sorry, that's what my mother, unlettered mother, taught me, that if you offend someone, learn to say sorry. And this is an offense that is of incredible magnitude. It threw Nigeria into total chaos. And we have not recovered from it almost 33 years after. So that apology would have helped to assuage the ill feelings in the country. But unfortunately, I think we missed that opportunity. Yeah. When I got the invitation, I was in fact expectant that, okay, finally, we're all going to gather in a room. Because I believe in reconciliation. No matter how bad the situation is, we've seen it in South Africa, we've seen it in Rwanda. If you go to the Genocide Museum in Kigali, you will see how a country has tried to make the best of a terrible situation where millions of lives were wasted. You will see mass graves in the museum. But it seems Nigeria does not know how to manage crisis. Look at our civil war. Where can you go today that you will see the evil effects of the civil war and you become sober in the process? We are continuing like a country of gamblers. We just gamble and move on, and nothing moves us any longer. So people gathered in that place, and instead of getting that feeling of sobriety, what we saw was a feeling of celebration. So I think the management of that event, yeah, it was good to have a library. I don't have anything. I'm sitting in my own library here. There's nothing wrong with having a library, but it should have done in a different atmosphere. It looked almost like a carnival to a lot of people, and that is why people are complaining, and that's why some people are still angry that what exactly is going on. Those people put money down, and everything would have run smoothly.
Okay. Now, Chief Dele Momodu, you've said quite a lot. There are people that will argue with you that he wasn't even democratically elected, so the case of the presidential library does not arise, that it doesn't deserve to have one. But you've mentioned things that are quite instructive in your last submission. You talked about Rwanda, and we've seen South Africa Truth and Reconciliation Council. We've seen the TRC also in the Gambia in the aftermath of Yahya Jammeh's rule. Nigeria had the Okuta panel, which was a hybrid of what Truth and Reconciliation Council will be composed of. Now, a nation cannot forge ahead without justice. There are lots of injustices. A lot of people are angry, and there are chapters in our nation's history that we can't just sweep under the carpet or bury our head in sand and assume it didn't happen. Do you suggest, because a lot of the dramatis personnel in Nigeria's history from 1966 January coup. A few of them are still alive. General Yakubu Gowon, for example, is still alive. General T.Y. Danjuma, former President Obasanjo, quite a number of these actors, General Alani Akinrinade, Alabi Sama, quite a lot of them are still alive. Do you suggest we should have another type of Truth and Reconciliation Council to have genuine healing as a nation, and those who have wronged people in one way or the other should come out and apologize? Are they duty bound to tell Nigerians their own stories, apart from writing books?
I don't think with the kind of economic disaster that we have in Nigeria at the moment, we can afford another round of jamboree of bringing leaders together in Abuja or wherever to be talking about truth and reconciliation. We all knew what happened on June 12th. We have all felt the effect of what happened on June 12th. What we needed to do, and we must do, is to apologize to Nigerians, to the families, and to all those who suffered one calamity or the other as a result of the June 12th annulment. So we don't need to have a Truth and Reconciliation Committee. It's just going to be another waste of time. But let those who were involved, and Babangida mentioned a lot of them in his book, so they can come together on their own, fund it on their own. I believe government was not the one that funded the event in Abuja. So let them come together and offer apologies live on television. Let the whole world see that we're truly sober, that we truly regret what happened. It's not just about saying it. We must come out and make sure that these apologies are offered urgently, because without it, we will keep going around in circles, and it's unfortunate. Absolutely. Because Nigeria has been bleeding since June 12, 1993. Nothing has changed.
So let's move on from that. Even though, as we said, Abacha's grandson has also raised alarm on these accusations and the family is speaking. But the book also sheds new light on the supposed Igbo coup theory, disputing its validity and also the negative impact it's had on the Igbo people. Furthermore, former military dictator Babangida criticized Gowon, who was present, for failing to provide adequate security for Igbos living in the north. Now, it's almost difficult to weigh which one of these revelations really had the biggest impact. It sort of depends on the side of this political spectrum and the probably regional spectrum you're on. But Chief Mamadu, when you look at this revelation, this admission that there was not an Igbo coup, that in fact it was an Igbo man or Igbo men who stopped the coup, and it seems the country has been living a lie for so many years. If there are people calling for his prosecution based on the June 12th situation, what do we make of this revelation now? It's really quite interesting, because you see this a lot with political figures when time is ticking and they want to get everything off their chest. But sometimes in getting everything off your chest, you further burden people. You further leave confusion in your wake. So yes, he's cleared this up for Nigerians, but what do we do with it? And what do you think could have been done if we knew this earlier? Because that division, the continuous theory of an Igbo coup, has shaped many political decisions and many futures in this country.
You see, as much as I see myself as a scholar, I do not like to engage in exercise in futility. I know for a fact that Nigeria is a mafia nation, and that is why this impunity can occur regularly and repeatedly. It's an exercise in futility to say go and prosecute Babangida when he's one of the major members of the owners of Nigeria. I came up with that theory in 1998-99, when General Olusegun Obasanjo was contesting against Chief Olufalaye. And I tried to get Dr. Ridwan Lukman, who was at OPEC in Vienna at that time. I traveled to Vienna to persuade him to be a running mate to Chief Olufalaye. And Dr. Riwan Lukman told me that the owners of Nigeria have decided that Obasanjo is the next president of Nigeria. And I said, are we not going to have an election? And he said, of course, we have an election, but it's all preconceived, preconsidered, and then predetermined. So it is virtually impossible today, the way Nigeria is configured. You can see that even President Bola Tinubu, who fought Babangida, who fought Abacha, we were together in exile for 3 years in London. He couldn't spit fire the way we used to spit fire in those days. You know, so Nigeria has a way of sucking you in to the extent that you become a part of the system. And anybody who knows our country very well, we know that calling for the prosecution of either Gawan or Babangida or any of the principal actors is just an exercise in futility. The practical thing now is that we must find a way to make sure that such an event does not repeat itself and that we truly forgive ourselves. We need that full reconciliation for Nigeria to be at peace. Because right now, we may pretend that all is well, but all is not well with Nigeria.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, Chief Momodu, we often hear about the Maradonic nature of IBB, and his book has raised quite a lot of canker-worm. The talks about the annulment. He said it was the Navy Chief, his Vice President, Augustus Ikomo, Admiral Augustus Ikomo's Chief Press Secretary, in the Cairo board that made the announcement of the annulment, and it's also raised a flurry of other issues. Do you think, I mean, he's in the departure lounge now, do you think we might have to wait for a rejoinder? Because there's so many explanations he has to make, or we should just take it at surface value? Where do all these unanswered questions lead us to?
That's why I said all the explanations and justifications were not necessary. I was not in Nigeria on June 12th because Chief Abiola had sent me again to Vienna to represent him at the Bruno Kreisky Awards, where Chief Gadifahimi was awarded for human rights campaigns. And I left Vienna on June 12th to London. On June 14th, I called Prince Nduka Obagbena in Lagos, and he told me he's been trying to reach me, that I should try and reach Chief MKO Abiola urgently because he's going to win the election, but it seems the military is not ready to hand over to him. And I thought it was a bad joke, but it turned out to be the reality. So that's why I said it was preconsidered, and well executed. So it was not as if it was an error or just a mistake. It was an intentional mistake, which has become extremely costly for Nigeria. Yeah. So all I can say is that for now, let us hope that before all these our elders go back to God, that they will do what is right by coming together to show genuine remorse.
Have you forgiven?
They must be remorseful, genuinely, not that we will just wave it like, oh, it's a regrettable.
Now, personally, you were part of a struggle. You were detained. You also had to flee for your life. You were in exile. And June 12 means a lot to you. It's not hearsay. You were a part of and parcel of the struggle. Have you forgiven General Ibrahim Babangida for truncating June 12 and personal injuries to your person?
I am not God. I forgive easily. I forgave him long ago because for me, one, I'm a Christian, and biblical injunctions tell me that we must forgive our enemies, our traducers, 70 times, 7 times. So if I want to practice my religion squarely, I would say I do not have the capacity to harbor hatred against anybody. I leave people to God to judge them. Whatever the action or whatever you've done to me that I don't find comfortable. So it's not just about me, it's about the nation. But personally, I forgave him long ago because what else can I do? Nelson Mandela, after spending 27 years in prison, could come out and forgive those who put him in prison. He interacted with those who put him in prison. He traveled around the world and meeting the queens and the presidents of the world who supported apartheid. It shows that there is nothing that we cannot forgive in life. But what makes the forgiveness in Nigeria more difficult for a lot of people is this lack of direct apology.
Yes.
Once there is a direct apology, there is nothing more anybody can ask of him. And I'm hoping that there will be an opportunity again for him to say directly that I am very sorry. And that's all. I've always told people who are close to him, including my sister Aisha. Babangida played a crucial role in Nigeria. He had one of the best teams, a star-studded team, but June 12 just read everything that he achieved. For me, he would have been one of the greatest leaders of all time in Nigeria, but for this June 12 crisis, which I can see, he is truly, you can see that he is pained by it, but still doesn't know how to resolve it finally. And I'm saying it live on television today, it is not as difficult as it is to just say, look, I am truly sorry. If possible, if you are going to pay visit, if they agree for you to visit them, to some of the families, visit them and, sympathize with them, empathize with them, and I'm sure it will assuage their feelings.
Chief Mamadou, before we let you go finally, it does seem like at the end of the day that the annulment of June 12th will likely forever define Ibrahim Babangida's tenure as military dictator in Nigeria and his part in Nigeria's history. But there are those who have called for the federal government now, as one of the steps you say towards reconciliation, to mention or to announce that it was MKO Abiola that was that won the election, posthumously make him president and afford his family all that is due to him as a former president of Nigeria. What do you think of that suggestion?
Well, I don't see anyone better to do it than President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was an integral part of that battle for, the revalidation of the annulled election. But for political expediency, he might not be able to do it now. Maybe, hopefully, if he gets the second term, because I don't know who will get, who will be president in 2027. One of the things that must be done is to go beyond what President Buhari already did by recognizing Abiola, but by actually compensating some of those who suffered. Because you cannot imagine what we lost. But for God, many of us would have perished, and a lot of people did perish, So I'm not expecting anything from any government, but I believe the family of Abiola in particular, we lost a father, we lost a mother in Alhaja Kudirat Abiola, and so many other families were wasted. So something needs to be done, at least to show future generations that such a behavior will never occur again in our country.
All right, on that note, we wrap up this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Chief Dele Mamadou, owner and publisher of Ovation International magazine. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
This is a conversation that continues because these are two massive revelations that have come from the former military ruler Ibrahim Babangida's book, but they're not the only ones.
Tolu, I was just wondering if we would ever move past discussing June 12 as history, would get to that stage where it's history, or would it continue to be an open wound? I guess.
I think very quickly before we go break, I'll tell you what I think. If Nigeria had succeeded as a democracy, it would be, how you drive, and an object becomes smaller and smaller in the mirror, sure. It becomes smaller and smaller. But because we haven't truly succeeded as a democracy, for many people, it looms large in the past. We'll take a quick time out now. When we return, Breakfast Central continues. Stay with us.
Nigerians, we love to rant about corruption. We shout politicians as thieves, the government is useless. But let's be real, who are these politicians? They didn't drop from the sky. They're Nigerians, just like me and you. We cast government looters, but many of us are we really honest in our daily lives? We bribe police officers, cheat in exams, and lie on CVs. We pay for special jam centers so our kids can pass. We jump queues, inflate invoices, and look for who we sabi to cut corners. But when a politician steals, we act shocked. Hypocrisy. Every year, $582 million is lost to petty bribery, not high-level fraud. Just everyday Nigerians giving egunje to speed things up. Ghost workers cost Nigeria over 200 billion naira annual salaries paid to people who don't even exist. In private companies, corruption is just as bad. Many businesses evade taxes, falsify financial records, and refuse to pay workers a fair wage. Look at the oil sector. Marketers manipulate prices. Filling stations manipulate their pumps by making adjustments to the metering system, and transporters inflate fares whenever they feel like it. At our roads, how many drivers obey traffic laws? We run red lights, drive against traffic, and block junctions just because, Niger way. And then election season comes. We cry, we need change. But when politicians share 5,000 naira, rice, and T-shirts, we collect them with a smile and vote for them. 4 years later, we act surprised when the hospitals are still death traps and the roads are still bad. But who's really fooling who? But wait, who even has time to care? We're too busy consuming the latest social media gossip and celebrity drama. We ignore pressing national issues while engaging in meaningless conversations. Talk about priorities. Yes, the righteous Nigerian. Always the victim, never the villain. The politicians are the problem, not the bribes we pay, the laws we break, or the shortcuts we take. Surely, corruption starts and ends in Asura, while the rest of us are just innocent bystanders. What a convenient lie. Like Fowle said, everybody is a hypocrite. Good morning, Nigerians.
But wait.
You're welcome back to break.
I'm interrupting. How will you take on Nigerians in which way Nigeria and they don't want me to talk? Why don't you want me to talk? Really?
I mean, Nigerians, the politicians don't fall from the sky. They're a product of the system. Until we get a critical mass of Nigerians do right, then it will be garbage in, garbage out. There's no science.
So the political elite are from the system.
Yes,
but
they attended Nigerian schools, Nigerian religious institutions. They are part and parcel of us. They have our cousins, our family members.
But for generations, they've created a system within a system. So they have a system forming a system within a system. And they're eating themselves and us from the inside out. And while at the end of the day, most Nigerians are not necessarily always upset about corruption, we're upset that we're not part of the party.
Exactly, and we need to change that mindset. If you look at all elective positions in Nigeria, plus essays and political advisors, they are not more than 5,000. There are 200 million Nigerians. So are these 5,000 people greater than us to determine our destiny for life? We just have to look beyond our stomach and unite. But we're too poor to organize and unite.
So it
we're always waiting for it's our turn to eat.
Benga, it feels like it's a chicken and egg situation. We're too poor to unite because there's a reason we're poor. The poverty that is happening in Nigeria is not a poverty of accident. It's an intentional, systematic system that has been put in place for a number of years. Education is not as bad as it is because we simply do not know how to make our education system work. And poverty is not as bad as it is because we don't know how to make people richer. There are countries we can look at to just take a leaf from their book and change things. It's intentional. And I remember many years ago on radio, somebody told me that democracy starts at breakfast. The man that wants to fight for democracy can fight for democracy when he knows where his first meal of the day is coming from. I think but it's good. It's a good conversation to have because at the end of the day, when they do bring that 5,000, when they bring the bag of rice, we need to look at the health centers we don't have, at the education that we don't have, at the security we don't have, at the cheaper food in the markets that we do not have, and weigh that against what we're being offered. I like it.
Okay, and now let's look at what the newspapers are saying today. The stories making headlines in the newspaper. We'll start from the Punch newspaper. The headline there says APC-PDP clash as El-Rufai woos opposition parties. Ruling party berates Kaduna ex-governor for romancing PDP big wigs and others. And on top of that, we have tax reform. National Assembly engages caucus leaders as hearing begins.
This is really interesting, this El-Rufai situation. A lot of people have one or two things to say about it. The fact that he was in company of the former Vice President of Nigeria, Atiku Abubakar, on a visit to the Clark family, reportedly soliloquizing, reportedly bigging up, as some young people would say, the former Vice President. And so it's raised a lot of eyebrows. Is it about the fact that he didn't become a bigger part of this administration? He did not become a minister as possibly he intended and hoped for. What does that all mean in regards to the conversation around El-Rufai and 2027 especially as well? So that's what the Punch has, a number of other things on the front page of the Punch. And we look forward to, of course, seeing what those stories are, how those stories develop, I beg your pardon, in the course of today and in the coming days as well.
Okay, we also have on the front page of the Daily Independent newspaper, experts see banks benefiting from elevated interest rate environment, urge fiscal monetary authorities unite to tackle inflationary pressures. That's looking at the economy there. Nigerian visa applicants accuse South African embassy of corrupt practices, says it demands through agents unreceipted 1.2 million naira. Interesting take there. And federal government saving $25 million daily following recent reforms. I would like to see the details.
How are you? Where are you saving that 25 million naira daily? In terms of that savings, what are the plans? So if you're saying, and when did you start the savings? So let's help you calculate.
Yes.
Did you start it last week, Monday? Has it been 5 days of savings? How many days of savings has it been? If you've saved it and it's not money out, then what's happening to what has been saved? Are you using it for our own benefit? I think these are questions. It's easy to say, oh, we're saving this money. But in a country such as Nigeria, people want to be sure where that money is going so that it's not being saved on behalf of somebody's pockets.
And Nigeria's inflation declining after rebasing as cosmetic, says analysts. I mean, you don't need analysts to tell you that. You know how much you were buying certain things last year, but a few months ago, you know how much it is now. And let's move to the next newspaper. That's The Guardian.
All right, on the front page of The Guardian, afterthoughts of the Maradona say critics as IBB shares June 12th blame. Again, this is going to continue to be a massive story that has ripples and counter ripples and has different stories. As I was coming in this morning, someone was saying that this doesn't have to be his only book. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has written a number of books. Talked about his time in the military and his role there, and of course as a
civilian president
in the Fourth Republic in Nigeria. So if IBB is going to take some of the feedback, are we going to see a revision of what he has written?
We hope to, because if you see that headline, it says afterthought of the Maradona. The Maradona moniker seems to stick with him because even in his book, moniker, he's still not taking responsibility. He's dribbling. But people have said, you know, he's moved away from Maradona in his younger days to Lionel Messi. So he's now the Messi.
And what's the implication of that? I understand the Maradona implication.
No. So Messi is the current dribbler, is the current world best number 10, you know, still making Maradona moves in old age. So there are lots of questions to be
And one thing I would have loved us if we had a bit more time with Chief Dele Momodu was to ask him the perception of what Nigerians would have had looking at the people who were in that room. Literally all living presidents and former rulers of Nigeria were present, as well as many governors.
And the current president.
And so many people. And then he's making the statement and he gets applause when he says, I made a mistake and I regret the annulment. And I'm just thinking how Nigerians, many Nigerians and many people who had family members who were affected by his administration, who lost their lives, who lost their property, who were in one way or the other impacted, would have felt sitting at home, seeing what is Nigeria's core political elite in one room, listening to Ibrahim Babangida's version of Nigerian history.
I mean, the people he persecuted were sitting there, the Nadeko elites and what have you. And I also want to ask, why is it so difficult for a certain generation of Nigerians to just utter the words, I am sorry? Does it take anything away from you?
They feel that it takes away from them because they've never owed anybody an apology. Even the fact that we're getting a book now, some people might say we should be happy about that, that this is closure. Because that was one of the words that Chief Mamadu used. And I don't think this is closure. I don't think it's enough closure. Closure also comes with consequence. And it should also come with responsibility and a bit of justice as well. Justice, are we going to get that? I'm not so sure. But consequence, it's still possible. Someone was referencing the fact that even up till now, those who took part in the Holocaust in Germany are still being persecuted. They're still being chased down, and they're still being sent to jail. You mentioned the Truth and Reconciliation committees that were commissions that were set up in Rwanda and South Africa. Even the one in Rwanda is still slightly active, if you want to look at it.
There's a Simon Wiesenthal Center for Nazi hunters.
Exactly.
They go to South America, they hunt people that were part of the Holocaust in 1945. There are people in their late 80s that still have to face justice, and it's very active. Because without that justice element, it remains an open wound.
And you look at a country such as ours with so many open wounds, how do we move forward? The way you clean a wound is sometimes very painful. You clean it out, it's painful, you suture it, you pour alcohol, you make sure that the infection is not able to spread. I don't think Nigeria was ever able to stop the infection from spreading.
Yeah, and post-Civil War, it was no victor, no vanquished. So we just moved on, and we didn't want to talk about it. Yes.
A very big lie. All right, those are the front pages we have for you with a little bit of a sprinkle of our conversation. The Punch, we have Daily Independent, Punch, The Guardian as well, looking at the big stories. And those also happen to be some of the big stories we've touched on here on Breakfast Central.
And later today on News Central, Tolu, I think you should just remain on this chair.
I cannot, but you know, we talked about local government. Jasiri is going to take on local government funds and citizen activism today. If the local governments are getting money, are you asking questions about where your money is going? So join us at 10 a.m. on Jasiri for that conversation.
We also have the news at 12 noon, and of course, Politics HQ with Dapo Adeboye at 7 p.m. Thank you so much for being a part of today's show. I am Benga Boro. I'll see you tomorrow.
I'm Tolulokwe Adila Rubalogun. I'll see you at 10 a.m. West African time on Jasiri. Thank you so much for joining us. The breakfast team will be back tomorrow. Do you have a good one? Bye.